Last Tuesday, and I mean last Tuesday, like a week ago, I sat down at my desk for 2 hours, 2 full hours. I had my coffee, I had my candle lit, my phone was face down, which if you know me, you know that's a big deal because it's a total distraction. I had my calendar open on the computer. I had my priority list I made the night before. That was like a proud little overachiever. And I sat there and I stared at it and I did absolutely nothing. Did I open Canva and start the presentations that are due this week? No. Did I draft the email I've been putting off for 6 days? No. Did I reorganize my entire desktop? Best planner for ADHD. Did I do research? No. I stared at it. And here's what I didn't do in that moment. I didn't beat myself up because I have learned something that changed everything for me, and it's exactly what we're diving into today. Welcome back to the ADHD CEO podcast. I'm Alyece Smith, and we're going to talk about task initiation, why your brain literally refuses to start the thing, and what actually helps. Not the cute productivity hacks from people who don't have ADHD, the real stuff. Let's dive into it.
Yo. Yo. Yes.
Yo, it's Alyece, say it right, no cap. ADHD CEO, yeah, we run this track. Systems that slap, brains built different. We make sales in our sleep, yeah, the hustle's efficient. This ain't fluff, nah, this is strategy raw for the ADHD. Minds breaking every old law. Hit subscribe, don't miss a single show. We're running on dopamine, let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
All right, so I want to say this super clearly before anything else. If you're an ADHD professional, entrepreneur, adult with ADHD in general, you spend more time thinking about working than actually working. And this is not necessarily a character flaw, it's not laziness. It is your brain doing exactly what an ADHD brain does. And behind the scenes, what's happening is your brain needs dopamine to start a task, not to finish it, not to do it well, just to begin it. And for non ADHD brains, that dopamine kind of flows automatically. Oh, you need to do this thing. It's Tuesday. Therefore, you do the thing, right? But for us, the dopamine doesn't show up on demand. It needs something, some sort of novelty, some sort of urgency, some sort of passion, deadline that's breathing down your neck, or genuine fear of consequences. And it's funny because I had this conversation with someone last week. We were talking about an organization I'm in, and I responded in a way to some of the communication that maybe was a little out of character for me. I was super frustrated and they could tell. And so when asking me like, "Hey, why are you so frustrated with this?" You know, I explained to them like I don't have all the information I need to do this correctly. And so I was in this fear of falling on my face, looking like a jackass, right? And so that is an example of, that fear of consequences. And there was no consequences if I messed something up. I created that for myself because that's how I do my best work, is having all the information, being prepared. And so this is why you often feel like there has to be chaos for you to get anything done. Because without one of those triggers, your brain looks at, like, write this email and goes, yeah, no, we're not doing that today. That's not fun. Or there's no dopamine in it. Right. And so you probably have this sense that you create all of this chaos that isn't necessary. And that is your brain's way of filling the dopamine need. And so that is often why you also get distracted going, hey, I got to do this thing. I got to send this email. And your brain's like, have you considered watching TikToks about how to organize your pantry? And this is also why that advice of like, just do it or stop overthinking is completely useless for us. It's like telling someone with a broken leg to just walk it off. Okay, the leg is broken. The leg needs support. The leg needs a doctor. So, what does support actually look like for you? And I want to give you some real examples from my life and from my clients' lives, because this is the stuff that you need to know, you need to hear. This stuff is way more nuanced than most people even realize. And so, I have a client I've worked with one-on-one throughout the years, a brilliant woman running a 6-figure business. And she told me that every single Monday morning, she sits down to write her weekly content and spends the first 45 minutes doing what she calls getting ready to get ready. And we talk about this a lot, but I've never really heard anyone name it. I've called it like plan to plan to plan before, but I loved how she talked about it. Says she like sharpens her pencil. She likes pencil because she said she messes up a lot, so she's not a pen person, which I thought was hilarious because I'm like, "Okay, well, there's mechanical pencils, so can we save you some time by, like, using mechanical pencils?" But anyway, that was just me going, "Come on, really?" But I love her, and she used to be a teacher, so that's probably part of why there's the whole pencil thing. And then she refills her water, she goes back for a snack so that it can be on her desk when she's ready. She opens her laptop, she closes it, she opens it again, she rearranges stuff on her desk. She looks at the clock and she feels this wave of shame just around somehow getting ready to get ready, and she's done nothing. Another one I'll tell you is my husband Clayton, and bless him for his patience with me because Lord knows it requires it. But, I can have a completely empty afternoon, simple task list, no distractions, and be more paralyzed than when I'm slammed and running on adrenaline. Because when I'm slammed, there's urgency. There's a dopamine hit of this has to be done. I have a deadline. People are counting on me. My brain just floats. So it's not necessarily procrastination the way most people define it. And that's a misconception. Most people would say, well, you're just procrastinating. Just get it done. Right. And so I actually posted on Facebook and threads last night. I was like, gosh, somebody telling an ADHDer to just being a tech guru, have you tried to clear your cookies? It's like so annoying. And that gap is what we're solving today because most people will say it's procrastination. Procrastination implies a choice. If I could do this, but I'm choosing not to. Task paralysis is totally different. It's a freeze. Your body is at your desk, your brain wants to work, but the signal between I want to start and I am starting is just not firing off. And so that gap is what we're solving today. So these are the things that have worked for me and for some of my clients, not as like a prescription, all right? You guys know I'm not a medical provider. Talk to your doctor, all that good stuff, right? But because we're all wired differently, these work as a starting point. So, strategy one here, okay? If you've never listened to any of my episodes, I like to get super tactical. So I hope you have a pen and paper or, make sure you save this so you can come back and listen to it again. I call this the ridiculous. I call this ridiculous because it almost feels too small to count. And it's kind of the whole point. Instead of like, I'm going to write my email newsletter or I'm going to send an email to my list, the task becomes, open a blank document and type the subject line. That's it, just the subject line. Instead of, film a TikTok, it's like, okay, turn on my ring light, open TikTok. That's it. And the reason this works is because your brain is negotiating with you almost at all times. That big thing feels too much. And you're saying, cool, we're not doing the big thing. We're going to do this one tiny thing. And 9 times out of 10, once you've done the tiny thing, you're going to keep going because momentum in itself is a dopamine hit. I use this strategy every single day. Okay. Open the Google Doc, write the client's name at the top, start there, right? By the end of that session, I have 3 pages of notes, for my students when I'm reviewing landing pages or whatever. But it's just some sort of initiation that takes the cake. And it's the key to the ignition, to turning it on, right? Another strategy I like to use often is the 5-minute lie. Okay. I know this sounds crazy. And I had to come up with a name for it for this episode because I was like, I do this all the time, but I don't know what kind of name to give it. And so it's super simple. And you may already do this, but like I said, I had to name it this morning. I kind of tell myself out loud, like, okay, I'm going to do this for 5 minutes. I'm going to set a timer, a real one, not on my phone. Okay. Not in my head. I will set one. I usually like Alexa because I have echoes all over my house and I could see them. They have a screen. And I will tell myself, like, okay, I'm going to fold laundry for 5 minutes. And then I will work on that. I will fold laundry for 5 minutes. What usually happens is I hit that 5-minute mark and I'm either already done with the hamper or I've got 2 pieces of clothes left and it makes absolutely no sense to stop. But that resistance is gone. And my brain's like, okay, you got to finish this. Keep going. And so if you hit 5 minutes and you still hate it or you want to stop, you stop. There's no guilt. You give yourself a break and you come back. But that 5 minutes counts. And so it's funny because when I was a kid, my mom used to clean during commercials. I'm pretty sure she still does. It was very rare that we were ever home all day, but when we were, my mom loves the Hallmark Channel and she would get into these Hallmark movies and she would watch it. And then when a commercial would come on, she would get up and she would clean. And then she'd come back and watch it, get up, clean. And it's funny because I kind of learned that from her, but it works really well. And a lot of times you just completely end up ignoring whatever that background noise is or whatever you were doing in the meantime, right? Another strategy I use is my environment as a trigger. And I talk about this a lot in Flow First Thinking, my book, which again, I'll put all that in show notes because it is out. It is ready to be ordered. I am so freaking excited about the launch of that book. But this one's really underrated because your brain associates places and contexts with behaviors. So if you always respond to emails from the same spot at the same time, eventually sitting in that spot at that time becomes its own signal to start. And so I have a client who really struggles to work from home. And so she talks a lot about going to coffee shops or libraries, just getting out of her house. Because at home, your brain kind of decides, okay, Netflix is here, snacks are here, right? But if you go to a coffee shop for 2 hours every morning and do your work and then come home, the coffee shop is that dopamine trigger, right? The noise is gone, the environment's changed, the slight social pressure, being around other people, it all works together. And so for me, I have a very specific morning routine. I get up, I get my coffee, I move the laundry. So I clean up the counters in the kitchen a little bit while my coffee's making. And then I come sit at my desk and I start with my personal emails. I know that's crazy. I don't do business emails until usually later in the day when I'm in a lower energy because I don't want to use my best energy on emails. But my personal emails are usually like things for my kids, bills that need to be paid, that kind of stuff. And so they are kind of urgent usually. I have gone through and unsubscribed to everything that's not really urgent. And so for me, that does create some urgency. That's important, right? I need to get back to my kids' school. I need to obviously pay bills, got to keep my house, all those things. So that trigger of sitting down at my desk with my coffee and getting my personal life in order first is kind of a momentum builder for me because I know my family's taken care of, my household's taken care of. Now I can focus on work. And the last strategy really is, tell someone what you're starting. And I think I talked about this last week on the episode. I've talked about this 100 times in my programs. But this one is embarrassingly simple, okay? And it's wildly effective. Before you sit down, do the hard thing, tell someone, text someone, partner, friend, business bestie, coaching program, whatever. Say, I'm going to work on this for the next 45 minutes. Now, I don't usually do that day to day, but I talked about this again last week, I believe, where I have made posts on Facebook and been like, I am hosting this masterclass, come join me. And I don't even know what the outline is yet. But I talked about this at the beginning, have this fear of falling on my face. And so I know that if I put it out into the world, it's going to happen. I made a post about Flow First Thinking, the book coming out before I even started writing it, because I knew that that was almost like my public accountability. And you just say it out loud to another human or you put it out into the world. Now your brain kind of has this small social contract. And suddenly it like starts to feel less like screaming into the void. And so in my academy session, this is what we do weekly. We do these, sessions where a lot of times it's just hot seats and my students show up and they say what they're working on. They turn the cameras on. We work, on what they need to get that done. No one's judging. It's real. And the presence of other people, even virtually, gives your brain something to kind of anchor on. And so I want to slow down for just a second because I think there's something underneath all of this that doesn't get talked about enough. A lot of us, especially ADHD entrepreneurs who've been told their whole lives that they're too much or they're not focused or they're always distracted, have developed a real emotional relationship with the task that we avoid. Like it's not just the task is boring, it's that we failed to start it before, we let ourselves down, we looked at the unfinished project or the bathroom that's still half painted, the unanswered email, and there's this shame. And so when you sit down to work, you're not just staring at a task, you're walking back into a room where you've been hurt and your nervous system is trying to protect you from that. And that's not a weakness. That's a completely understandable response to years of struggling in a world that wasn't built for your brain. And that's why the sustainable solution isn't just better systems, it's also a gentler self talk. It's recognizing that, the starting point is hard and you don't have to make it harder by adding shame on top of it. And so when I teach the flow method, one of the first things that I teach is figuring out your spark times. And if you're listening to this today or tomorrow, so today is Tuesday, February 17th, tomorrow is Wednesday, February 18th. I am teaching the Flow First Masterclass. And in order to get into the masterclass, you have to grab the book on pre-sale because the pre-sale comes with the autograph copy, all the bonuses. So if you haven't already grabbed that, it's in the show notes. You've got 2 days, okay? The first masterclass is tomorrow at 12:30, Wednesday, February 18th. So you have time, but your brain is fighting your natural rhythm. And so this is where task initiation feels impossible. But when you schedule your hardest starts during your peak windows, it gets easier. Not easy, easier. I want to bring this thing. Starting is the hardest part. And this is the feature of your ADHD brain, not a bug in your character. Okay. These strategies that work are small and they're specific, and they do lead to big momentum and ridiculous micro starts, 5-minute timers, environmental triggers, social accountability. And most importantly, you don't need to be a different person to get started. You just need a plan that's built for your brain that you actually have. All right. So, again, if you want to go deeper on this, check out the show notes, grab your copy of Flow First Thinking on pre sale, join us in the masterclass tomorrow. We will be working through exactly this, but building systems and strategies around your real ADHD brain so that you're doing the work and it feels a lot less dragging yourself through the mud and more like actually running your business. Okay. So, as always, if this episode hit home, share it with another ADHD entrepreneur in your life who needs to hear this. Please leave a review for the podcast. It's the best compliment you can give because I promise you're not the only one sitting at your desk right now, staring at your to do list, wondering what's wrong with you. And it's really about reminding yourself and those others that nothing is wrong with you. Make sure you take a screenshot of you listening to this, throw it in your stories, and tag me at socially.awesome on IG. I want to hear this. Okay. I want to hear from you. Send me a DM. Hey, Alyece, this episode hit me hard. Like, this is the work I do in my programs, and nothing changes if nothing changes. And so you really do need to understand task initiation, and you really do have to understand task initiation and why starting feels impossible with ADHD to start making those tasks easier. So make sure to check the show notes for all the resources. I will see you in Flow First Masterclass tomorrow. As always, make it simple, make it social, and make it awesome.